If you feel most creative right when you're about to give up, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means your mind is trying to protect something important before you walk away from it. You've probably noticed it. You're exhausted, frustrated, convinced that this project, this dream, this version of you just isn't working. You're seconds away from closing the laptop, deleting the draft, quitting the plan, and then suddenly, something clicks, an idea appears, a better angle. A sentence you wish you had thought of earlier. It feels almost cruel. Why now? Why does your brain wake up only when you're ready to surrender? And what if that timing isn't accidental at all? Sometimes you sit at your desk staring at a blank screen for hours. Nothing flows. Every thought feels forced. You start telling yourself maybe you're not creative enough, not disciplined enough. You scroll, you sigh, you consider quitting, and the moment you say, "That's it, I'm done," a strange calm washes over you. Your shoulders drop, the pressure lifts. And suddenly, ideas start forming, not perfectly, but more honestly. Psychologically, this happens because pressure narrows your thinking. When you're trying too hard to succeed, your brain shifts into threat mode. It treats the task like a test of your worth. Cortisol rises, creativity shrinks. But when you decide to give up, even briefly, the threat disappears, your nervous system relaxes, and creativity, which needs safety to bloom, quietly returns. Isn't it interesting that your best thoughts often arrive the moment you stop demanding them? Or maybe it shows up differently for you. You've been trying to solve a problem for days. A business decision, a life choice, a conversation you need to have. You weigh every option until you feel mentally numb. Eventually, you throw your hands up and say, "Whatever, I don't care anymore." You go for a walk, you lie down, you detach, and then out of nowhere clarity surfaces, the exact words you need, the direction that feels right. This isn't magic, it's cognitive release. When you loosen your grip, your subconscious finally has space to reorganize information in the background. Your brain has been working the whole time, just not in the spotlight. The moment you stop consciously forcing an answer, deeper networks connect the dots. So maybe that flash of creativity before quitting isn't sudden inspiration. Maybe it's delayed integration finally breaking through. Have you ever wondered how much of your brilliance happens quietly beneath awareness? Then there's the kind of creativity that feels almost rebellious. You're tired of following the rules, tired of trying to make it good enough. Right before quitting, you think it doesn't matter anyway. And that's when you take a risk. You write the honest paragraph, you paint the strange idea. You speak more openly than you planned. And ironically, that's the version people respond to. Psychologically, when you believe you have nothing left to lose, fear loses its leverage, perfectionism softens, social judgment fades into the background. Your authentic voice, which was buried under expectations, finally gets airtime. So the creativity you experience right before giving up might not be new. It might just be unmasked. What would your work look like if you didn't feel watched by imaginary critics? Sometimes it's less about pressure and more about identity. You've been trying to prove something to yourself, to others. You want this effort to confirm that you're capable, that you matter, but the longer it takes, the heavier it feels. When you finally think about quitting, there's grief in it. A quiet acknowledgement that maybe this path doesn't define you after all. And in that moment of identity loosening, you feel strangely free. Creativity returns because it's no longer carrying the weight of your self-worth. When your project stops being a referendum on who you are, it becomes play again, and play is the birthplace of creativity. Isn't it possible that your mind waits for you to detach from outcome before it dares to explore? There's also the phenomenon of mental saturation. You push and push until your brain feels foggy. That fog isn't failure, it's overload. Neural pathways need contrast, rest, distance. When you reach the edge of giving up, you're often at the edge of cognitive exhaustion, and exhaustion forces surrender. Surrender creates space. In that space, your default mode network, the part of your brain responsible for imagination and insight, activates more freely, so the last-minute creativity you experience may be your brain finally switching modes, not from effort to laziness, but from control to curiosity. What if your mind isn't betraying you by withholding ideas earlier? What if it simply needs cycles of intensity and release? Think about the student who studies for hours, convinced nothing is sticking, ready to give up on the subject entirely. Then during a shower or just before sleep, understanding lands effortlessly. Or the entrepreneur on the brink of scrapping an idea who suddenly sees a pivot that changes everything. Or you, lying in bed at night after deciding you'll stop trying tomorrow, suddenly flooded with renewed vision. There's a psychological tenderness in that timing. When you're about to give up, you're often more honest. You admit what isn't working, you confront your limits, you soften. And that emotional honesty clears distortion. Creativity thrives in truth. So perhaps your most creative moments appear right before quitting because that's when you're finally telling yourself the truth, and truth reorganizes the mind. There's something else too. When you're close to quitting, you're standing at a threshold. Thresholds heighten awareness. The brain becomes alert when facing endings. It scans for missed possibilities. It searches for alternatives. Evolutionarily, this makes sense. Before abandoning a resource, your system double-checks for overlooked value. That final surge of creativity might be your mind's last attempt to salvage meaning. Not in a desperate way, but in a protective one. It's asking, are you sure you want to leave? Have you seen all that's here? And sometimes in that scan, you discover something you hadn't noticed before. So the next time you feel that strange spark right before giving up, maybe pause. Not to force yourself to continue, not to shame yourself for wanting to stop, just to notice the pattern. Notice how creativity returns when pressure drops. Notice how ideas flow when fear loosens. Notice how your mind seems to wait for permission, to rest, to detach, to be imperfect before offering its best thoughts. Maybe you're not someone who only becomes creative at the edge of defeat. Maybe you're someone whose creativity depends on psychological safety, honesty, and release, and you only allow yourself those states when you think you're done trying. There's a quiet misunderstanding here about how humans work. We assume creativity is a product of constant effort, but often it's a byproduct of letting go. We think giving up means failure, but sometimes the brink of quitting is simply the doorway to a softer, truer mode of thinking. If this made you think of yourself or someone you know, you're not alone. Feel free to sit with that thought. Maybe share it. And if you want more quiet psychology like this, you already know where the subscribe button is. This is Thinking.